Judge sitting on the bench, ready to come down with a ruling. The Pacific County Courthouse, maybe the most beautiful in our state and a good place to visit. This is one of my favorite places. Here we are in South Cle Elum, Roslyn Cemetery, and this is the final resting place for Doug Monroe. An incredible American hero, young man in the United States Coast Guard, received the Congressional Medal of Honor. I just can't say enough things about him. Talk about bravery. The Marines were landing at Guadalcanal. Doug was ferrying them ashore in the landing craft. The mission did not go well. The Japanese enemy had fortified the beach much beyond our capabilities, and the Marines had to turn around to try to get off the beach. As they did, they were being mowed down in the water by the Japanese machine gunners. Doug ran his landing craft between the machine gunners and the Marines to save their lives. He gave his own life to save the Marines in the water. He received the Congressional Medal of Honor posthumously, and he truly is an American hero. How lucky we are, how fortunate we are, how blessed we are that we have young men and young women in this state.
Oh, I've never been on rules.
Dead to be rich.
Oh, look at that.
It's okay, no desire to be on rules either.
It's kind of fun.
I like having that half an hour of my time.
Do you want to wait until 12:30?
Let's give it just a couple.
Okay.
Should I offer you some almonds?
We just make sure that he does
Here in the International District of Seattle sits the historic Panama Hotel. The hotel was built in the early 1900s. This spot was quickly a focal point for the Japanese community because it had baths, communal baths like they had had in Japan.
Interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced.
On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese surprise attacked Pearl Harbor and devastated most of our fleet. The President and the entire Congress was in total disarray as to what to do next.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Jamie Peterson from the Senate Democrats, and happy to be here with you. This is a critical pivot for us. We just got through the fiscal committee opposite house cutoff, and so we had a very exciting time over the last couple of days as the various bills from the House made their way through Senate Ways and Means, and the Senate bills worked their way through House appropriations. So now we're set up for a week of intense floor action on some really high priorities for us. That includes the rent stabilization bill that came from the House, as well as the permit to purchase bill, a bill updating paid family and medical leave, the parents' rights and students' rights bill from Representative Stonier are among the highlights that we'll be looking at over the next few days. And while all of that is going on in the floor, we're also in the process of trying to put together the final budgets and get to agreement with the House, and very happy to be working with our colleagues over there. So look forward to your questions.
And not much to report or to add to what Senator Peterson just said. Monica Stonier, our floor leader, joined by the majority leader, Representative Fitzgibbon. So we worked on the weekend as well, just to try and make sure we got some Senate priorities out of appropriations, and we're preparing to do that on the floor. We started right out of the gate, ran bills right after flags this morning. So the caucus is continuing to run through bills that we'll put more, and we'll do more this afternoon. So we're ready to go.
How close are you to come up with Plan B for the wealth tax? Essentially, are you guys taking roughly the same parallel paths? Are you going different paths? Is this something you think you can come up with a Plan B within the next few days, or are you hopelessly scratching your heads at this point?
As I mentioned last week, John, we had plans B, C, and D prepared already, and we're in active discussions with House leadership about that. And I don't think that, I mean, it's going to be a different set of plans and a different set of choices, but I think we remain firmly committed to and optimistic that we will get our work done on time.
Okay, because that's, is this something you're going to be unveiling within a week, 2 weeks, or the day prior to shut?
We will not be unveiling the day prior to sine die. The bills, you know, we're going to have a set of revenue bills as well. We're going to have a set of revenue bills that will need to pass out of both chambers and out of Ways and Means and Appropes, or Finance. I don't know how they do it over there anymore. But those, once we've reached agreement on a package, then those will have committee action. They'll have floor debate and move across the rotunda and be debated in the other chambers. So there will be a full public process. I would anticipate within the next week, I would think we would probably have something along the lines of a plan that we'd start to talk about.
Certainly our goal to get a full revenue plan as soon as we can. I think all of the tools that could be components of that plan will be public by this time next week. Which exact combination of tools we'll be using, we may still be working on that, but we are very hard at work trying to identify what that combination of tools looks like that enables our budgets to balance.
Is expanding the capital gains tax one of the more likely tools?
That is absolutely possible to be a tool. Yes.
But to be clear, wealth tax is off the table after what Governor Ferguson said last week?
I think it is safe to say, well, it's very likely that no part of our budget will be based on the wealth tax.
There are folks out on the lawn right now who are still banging the drum for that. That was something that all four of you, I believe, have been fighting for. What is that like to give up that goal, hope?
We have a lot of members and a lot of members of the legislature and members of the public who would really like to see a tool like that asks the wealthiest to support public services more. And so, there's definitely some disappointment among many of our members as well as many of our constituents that particular tool is not going to be part of our budget solution this year. There's still a lot of interest in seeing, how can we continue to advance that conversation and advance that discussion and get some of the questions answered so that we can explore that or related strategies towards rebalancing our tax code. But our primary goal is a balanced budget that invests in the things that our constituents care about. And we've always known that we couldn't put all of our eggs in one basket as we move towards that solution.
I think that pressure from the public is important and welcomed. I mean, we heard about it in our town halls, and that was an ask of many in our districts. So I think, we know that is a tool that folks want to see us to continue to focus on. But I will say in the discussion that we've had in appropriations and on the floor when we were passing the budget, how many times Republicans are talking about how regressive our tax code is a refreshing tone to hear as well. So it's, we're moving toward operating off the same set of facts here. And I think, that tool will be one we'll continue to work towards in the future.
There's also pressure from the public about the property tax proposal. And Republicans had a press conference this morning highlighting their concerns about it. So I'm wondering how that public pressure on that proposal is weighing into the negotiations or the conversation about that, if there's any sense of how those proposals might change or whether they'll make the ultimate cut. Just can you respond to that?
Property tax has been around since the beginning of the state, right? And it is sort of the base tax for funding of public schools at the state level and for funding of public safety at the county and city level. I think there is a lot of misunderstanding about how property tax works, and I suspect that as the session proceeds, that we are likely to have a lot more discussion and public conversation to help people understand what the proposals that are on the table would actually do to their taxes and what they would not do. There's a lot of demagoguery about that proposal.
And I'll just add that when you're taking a look at what people want and the services they need, you have to take a look at how do you balance things around. And the bottom line is our constituents want to make sure they have public schools where our kids can graduate successfully. They want to make sure that our schools are able to function in the manner they need to, that our special needs kids are getting the services they need. And we've seen public safety being mentioned over and over again for years. And the way our cities and counties fund public safety is through property taxes. And so you have to take a balanced approach, taking a look at all the needs our community has and how we're going to meet those needs. And part and parcel of that is the property tax. And again, it's in the details. The way people talk about it, when you have people mentioning tripling of property tax, that is completely inaccurate and false. And so until we can have an honest conversation on what this looks like, what is the amount that our constituents are paying and where that money is going, that is what changes people's understanding of how we're going to balance the budget and pay for the needs that people have.
Is that the misunderstanding that you were mentioning, Senator Peterson?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are repeated claims about tripling property taxes or even tripling the rate of increase, which is also inaccurate because people don't realize how relatively small the portion of those fixed rate property taxes from the state, the county, the city are relative to the entire property tax bill. The vast majority of what people experience as property tax increases comes from voter-approved levies, right? And so one of the things that happens when you're not funding the core is that it opens up space in the stack of potential property taxes for those voter-approved levies and for entrepreneurial governments to go propose things that could fill that space. You know, my personal view, I talk about this all the time when I chaired Senator Dingra's committee about broccoli bills. You know, you need to do the maintenance of the law first, and then you can do the fun new proposals. From my perspective, we need to set ourselves up for success with funding the core responsibilities of the government. Public schools, the Constitution unambiguously says, is our paramount responsibility at the state level. For local governments, public safety is the core responsibility. So we need to make sure that we don't have a structural problem in our laws that prevents our government from being successful at its basic functions. That may come at the cost of decreased voter willingness to do the additional levies for some of the nice-to-have things.
Are you concerned at all about some of the comments that were raised this morning in that press conference from small property owners that, you know, it's their income, it's their livelihood, saying if it goes up $1,000, $2,000 per year and compounding in subsequent years, that, you know, they can't keep those properties, and then at the same time they're also being, you know, rent caps in place. So it's like getting them from both ends. People feel like it's way too much.
What was super interesting in the press availability this morning that I heard several young Republicans commenting about how difficult rent increases were for them. And so, you know, we're really interested in and excited about the debate about rent stabilization, because I think that it really is responsive to a lot of the concerns that we were hearing even at the Republican press availability. We obviously are very sensitive to wanting to make sure that people are not priced out of their homes. That's one of the reasons that Senate Bill 5798 includes, for the first time, a full credit on all of the state property tax for low-income seniors and disabled veterans, right? So we are, for the most vulnerable folks who qualify for that, we are doing significant tax relief as part of the property tax proposal. We'll also, I think, look really carefully at how the rates actually play out for people. But I have to say, I would be stunned even on fairly expensive properties in Senator Dingra's district, in my district, a property tax of $1,000 seems very unlikely with the change from a 1% to a 3% growth rate.
They already said they ran those numbers off average home price in Washington directly off the fiscal note attached to the bill.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we talked about last year, and that I think we will need to do, is just, you know, give a few sample homes in different districts and show the effect of that cap. As I said, it's actually a pretty small percentage of the total property tax bill that comes from these fixed rate, the mill rate jurisdictions, that will be able to go from 101% to 103%, as opposed to the Sound Transit levy and the school levies and the school bond levies and the fire districts and the if you're talking about in our district, the seawall levy, and, you know, and none of those levies will be affected or change at all because of this proposal, right? So it's not as if if you're paying $10,000 right now, it isn't that your taxes would go up from instead of 10,100, it would turn into 10,300, right? Because it's not the whole property tax bill that would grow by 3% instead of 1%. So to get to $1,000 change, I mean, I think you have to be talking about a home that's probably worth $5 million at least. Like that's not. And that's even that, like, it would be, I'll run some numbers, but I'm telling you, that's not bearing any relationship to reality, which goes back to either carelessness or demagoguery that I was talking about before in terms of this proposal.
And this is, again, where we want to make sure the property tax versus voter-approved levies, people understand what the differences are.
I want to ask one more question about the ongoing budget negotiations. Republicans have voiced a lot of frustration about being left out of it. They didn't want to do the whole conference idea with the two Democrats and a Republican, and now they're saying it's been a week now where no Republicans are involved in any of this, and they're worried that what we're going to finally see, it sounds like the next week, then that's an up or down vote, no amendments are allowed. They feel like it's, there's a lot of power in just a handful of a mighty few. When do you respond to that?
Yeah, so what I would say is in 2017, the last year that the Republicans were in charge of the Senate, we had, with no public process, a bill slapped on, and we voted on it the same day and passed that out of the legislature. As a result, when we took the majority, we changed the rules to require more transparency. So one of the things that has been a challenge for our negotiations with the House is that we require the budget bill and all conference bills to sit on the bar for at least 24 hours now before they're voted on, right? So, the conference process is a process that's not something that we invented. That has been part of the rules of the legislature since the beginning. It includes members of the majority and minority parties, and ultimately to get a conference report on which you could have an up or down vote, you have to get agreement from 4 of the members of the conference committee, right? So anyway, I think we have been committed to having a lot of transparency about what are the things that are on the table. Both the Senate and the House have produced budget documents. I think it is, and have produced a bunch of revenue bills, as Representative Fitzgibbon mentioned before. We're going to have the full range of things that might be on the table no later than next week, right? And then, those discussions are ongoing, and we'll end up with a proposal that will have to sit on the bar and that will have an opportunity for public review before we have a final vote.
How closely are you guys working with the governor's office in these negotiations? When you come out with the final proposal, do you know that it will be one that he supports? Look, the governor is going to have, after we pass, this is always the case, not just with this governor, if we will almost certainly pass the budget on sine die on the 27th, and then he has 20 days, not including Sundays. His staff will be really working hard over that following, 3 weeks or so to look through the budget, figure out if there are line items that he wants to veto or not support, but looking at the whole plan. And that's the normal course for that to happen. I would say there has been a lot of conversation already. We had a very positive meeting with the House and Senate Democrats at leadership and the governor last Friday. And our staff are in daily communication on all sorts of details, both on the revenue side and on the spending side, seeking out, we had the comment letters that came from the Office of Financial Management, ironically asking us to increase spending or reverse. But, that's fine. That's the kind of feedback that we need on our budgets. We are also seeking their ideas for additional spending reductions that they would recommend to us. So that is a robust conversation that is going on constantly, and we're grateful for the collaboration and partnership of the governor's office in that effort.
The governor's office did not like the idea of tapping the rainy day fund, which was in the Senate proposal.
We will not be tapping the rainy day fund in the final budget. I think it's.
Do you disagree?
I think that there may be a little bit of nuance to that answer, but to my answer on that. But the broad sweep of the rainy day fund, I think, is the governor's made it very clear that he opposes that.
Using it all is off the table. Sounds
we're planning to balance the budget in other ways.
Following up on Laura's question, or asking a different way to pin you down a little better.
Good luck.
I gotta try. It's part of the job description. Essentially, have you communicated enough with the governor's office, and is there enough back and forth so when you come up with, we are going to raise tax B or create tax C, that the Governor Ferguson's not going to say, hell no, you've got to go back to the drawing board again. Essentially, are you communicating well enough that you're not going to come up with a non-starter in his eyes?
Yes, we are in touch with the governor and his team about all elements of what our ultimate budget solution may be. Now, he hasn't said with either on the reduction side or on the revenue side that he is for or against, every specific item that we've laid out there, but we do not plan to surprise him with anything.
And if we're taking a couple of these tax proposals off the table, are the cuts going to be deeper? And those folks that are outside, hoping for things that aren't even going to be touched now, we should expect to see deeper cuts than we saw a couple weeks ago.
We are actively considering both each other's cuts that were not in our own budget and additional potential reductions that we've sought from the governor's office. We remain committed to a balanced approach to figuring out the budget problem.
And this has been consistent from what we have been saying at every press avail, that we are going to be taking a look at the budget, scrubbing it as much as we can, making the cuts we need, and adding revenue. And so we've been extremely consistent. It's just a matter of how deep those cuts go. And we will continue to make sure that we have the balance that makes sure that the people of Washington can get the services they need. Simply, they're not going to get what they want.
On the much smaller revenue side in the House, Representative Davis had a few bills this week on dating apps, opioid manufacturers, cannabis. Do those have any chance of being a part of your revenue cocktail this session or going anywhere?
We are trying not to take anything off the table right now. I will say that taxes that are new or that are on a new category of payers take a little while to begin collections because Department of Revenue has to set up new systems to identify those payers and to collect different differential B&O rates from them. So they don't provide the near-term resources that we really need in order to balance, particularly in fiscal year 26. But they're ideas that have specific policy goals in mind, and that that are likely longer-term solutions to long-standing problems. So I think they're less likely to end up as part of this year budget solution, but they start important conversations about specific needs and specific impacts from the entities that are proposed to be paying those.
I think this is just the time of year you're seeing the fruit of creative thinking. Previously, we asked folks to help determine where reductions can be made, and also hearing from constituents how they felt about cuts that we'd have to make if we did not raise revenue. Those creative ideas this is that time of session when they're coming to light. But I would just say, we've been saying from the very beginning, all options are going to be considered And for every, tool in revenue that we are not able to do, we're going to have to see what that means for the budget. I'm getting emails every day, I know we all are, about one line item in the budget where the Senate has a high watermark they want us to ask the House leaders to get to, and where the House has a position that may be higher and they're asking us to ask our Senate friends to get to that level. We're not all going to be able to deliver on those, and so our members have been creative with revenue options that we can think about.
Here, I was thinking from my email that the House budget was higher on everything.
That is not true.
I'll send you some of mine.
I wanted to ask, it's a separate budget, but also taxes. The gas tax is being proposed to be increased in both versions of the transportation tax, or transportation budget, excuse me. I guess, what is your message to people who are looking at that and driving an old car that takes a lot of gas, or they commute a long distance from a rural area or wherever they might be? What's your message to people who are looking at that and are like, hey?
If you've got people who are commuting a lot and using the transportation infrastructure a lot, then 6 cents a gallon is a bargain for having a system that functions better. The proposal, I'll speak to the Senate proposal. I am quite pleased that Senator Leas was able to work with Senator King, and that we have a package that has bipartisan support that includes a gas tax as well as several other revenue options, and that really balances the transportation budget over the long term, both fulfilling our promises to fund the projects that we had promised previously, and also providing ongoing preservation and maintenance funding for our transportation system, including ferries. So there's, I think it is a really good, smart proposal, and will balance over the long term.
A couple weeks ago, Senator Peterson, you had talked about with the rent bill coming to the Senate, needing to adjust the dials to win some votes. Have they been adjusted enough, do you think, in the committee so far to get it over the finish line?
We will find that out shortly. But I feel optimistic that particularly the change in the sunset date down to 15 years, I think, helped a few of my members. And the Housing Committee also added a study at 10 years by JLARC, the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee, to determine on a variety of metrics how well the policy is working at its stated goals. And with those changes and with good action by both the House and the Senate on a variety of supply bills, I think that has resolved concerns for many of my members. So we're literally in the process of discussing and vote counting that bill as we walked down here.
I want to ask about something on the spending side. The World Cup is coming to Washington next year. There's a lot of proposals among all of the budgets to fund some of that stuff. But as you guys are thinking about, hosting a huge event in 2026, which in theory is the worst budget year, how are you guys balancing that, and what are you thinking might, come out of the final proposal?
It's important for us to have a successful World Cup. It's a very large event with a lot of visitors in town, and there's really significant asks in both the capital and the operating budgets for that to be successful. The Seattle Chamber of Commerce, who's been relentlessly opposing our work to balance the budget, also wants $20 million out of our budget out of the operating budget for FIFA. It's something that we want to have be successful, and it's not something that we can prioritize above the basic needs of people in our state who are struggling. So we will do what we can to make sure that the state is a good partner in making sure that that's successful and safe event. And we also have to be realistic about the fact that, at a time when we execed a bill out of appropriations yesterday to reduce postpartum maternal health coverage from 12 months to 6 months. So when we're making moves like that, we have to be pretty careful about what we're spending on the World Cup.
And I think the communities around the state that are going to be hosting fan zones are in communication with us as well, so that they are preparing. I know in Vancouver we're expecting to host visitors there, and it's a great place because it's right across the river where there's a lot of World Cup fans, and the Southwest Washington region really gets to benefit from that. But I think, our city and our county have been in communication with me and other legislators from the area about how they're going to make sure and do their part at the local level to make sure that event can be enjoyed by people all across the state safely and with the excitement that the FIFA World Cup should bring.
I'll just add, this could have been an event that would have been incredible for the state of Washington. But what is happening at the federal level, people don't want to come to the United States of America. So it's going to be interesting for me to see who actually shows up and where they come from. But it is not safe for people from other countries to come to the United States right now, because people are literally being picked up from the streets and taken away.
I want to ask one more question, if I can, about the bill that passed appropriations yesterday to close Ranger School and Yakima Valley School. A lot of passionate, emotional debate over Penner's amendment. Why not accept the amendment to make sure that DSHS has everything in place before these very vulnerable residents, who you guys champion for on every other cause, are placed in community settings? Why that deadline, that rush for that 18-month? Why not move in that direction if that's the goal, but for now have those safeguards in place to protect those people?
We thought the safeguards that Representative Penner's amendment proposed were well-intentioned but overly prescriptive. And what was stated by members on that amendment is that they'll be working hopefully with Representative Penner between committee and the floor on a set of benchmarks that are workable for the department.
So there still might be some room to accept some of what was in Penner's amendments. Okay, thank you.
Are you? Are you any closer to a decision on what to do about culverts and finding middle ground there between the House and Senate?
We've had a lot of conversations about that, but I can't share that there's resolution.
That continues to be one of the items that we're actively discussing between the two chambers.
Both caucuses are very committed to showing meaningful progress in the resolution of the issue, but we have different timelines and different solution structures for how we show that progress.
Thank you.
Thank you.